Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are joining us today at Life is a Sacred Journey. I am your host, Micheal Pope, and it is always my privilege and honor to come to you. We come to you every Friday morning on Facebook Live and through Blog Talk Radio, our YouTube channel, Instagram, and the variety of other streaming options that we have available to us through social media. And we thank you for joining us. We thank you. I have to just have a big shout out since we began broadcasting again, because we've been broadcasting for over 7 years on Blog Talk Radio. So this is not new. And then we added Facebook Live. And that's because my producer, Felicia, felt that it was important for us to move into, good morning, Paul and Lauren, Michelle and Gary, all of you who are joining us. Felicia, who is my producer, wanted us to go Facebook Live. I loved being behind the scenes, behind the mic, just a voice, but she felt that this was very important during this pandemic. We may go back to our blog mode and not do it this way after the pandemic, but we'll see. We'll take a vote. You guys can tell us what to do. So normally we begin our podcast by talking about acts of kindness. And because I saw Lauren Michelle's name, she's watching this morning, a dear friend, sister of mine. She's doing something that I know a lot of people are doing. She has a shopping day for people within her community. I see it on Facebook. She blasts it out and she says, I'm going shopping today on Saturday. And if you need something, good morning, Betty and Nancy. If you need something, please let me know. Give me your list. I'll swing by. I'll make it happen for you. She's not the only person doing that. She's just somebody I know that's doing that. A lot of people are doing that. So that's our act of kindness for today. You can continue to do that. We are continuing to shelter in place here in the state of California. We're going to be doing it county by county. Our bishop for the California-Nevada Conference, I want to raise Bishop Minerva Carconia up, has stated that our churches will remain closed during the month of June. I want you to know, last night I watched a documentary and watched the news and realized, you know what, guys, let's not be in a rush to get back into this, what we are beginning to call the new normal. And I don't know if there's anything, the two words don't work for me, but we'll do that in another show. And what we're doing right now is physically distancing ourselves so that we don't keep creating more viruses and more things. Be patient. This is something that I think that we as human beings have the most difficulty with outside of all the isms and stuff that we carry. But we're not patient people. We want things like this, and it doesn't happen that way. If in fact if that was the humanity that we were, we wouldn't have the isms that we have, and what's happening in Minneapolis last night and today would not be happening. I only want to say one thing about that. Because everybody who knows me knows exactly how I feel about that. It is important for my colleagues, my friends, my brothers and sisters who do not have as much melanin in their skin to understand that as a black woman growing up in America, and as you all know, my daughter made it known, I'm 63 years old, I have not lived one day of my life where I have not been told, shown, or felt the disdain from somebody who does not look like me. The good news is I had a strong Christian family. I had a family that taught me that who I was and that there was nothing about me that was junk. And so because of that, I'm able to persevere. But the reality is I'm feeling some kind of way right now. I am. And I'm trying to rise above it. And so because of that, Skyler Rhodes, who is a pastor and district superintendent in the Los Rios District, I asked him to join us this morning so we can talk about faith and COVID-19. But before we do that, I want to read something to you This was one of my favorite songs in 1975. I graduated from high school in 1975. It was the best summer of my life before I went off to college. And over the radio, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes sang this song. And I'm going to read these words to you because it's 2020, okay? It's 2020, and the song came out in 1975. Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There's so much hatred, war, and poverty. Wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. We're doing that now. Maybe they'll listen to what you have to say, because they're the ones who's coming up and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. The world won't get no better if we just let it be. The world won't get no better. The change is just in you and me. Wake up the doctors, make the old people well. They're the ones who suffer and catch all the hell. But they don't have so very long before the judgment day. So why don't we make them happy before they pass away? Wake up all the builders, time to build a new land. I know we can do it if we all lend a hand. The only thing we have to do is put it in our minds. Surely things will work out. They do it every time. And I'm going to skip down. Change the world what it used to be. We can't do it alone. We need some help. Wake up, everybody. Wake up. Let's make this a new day. And you know what? Mothers, white people, black people, Asian people, together as a humanity, we need to stop fighting. I said to people when the church was talking about LGBTQI and we were getting ready to split up our church over this, I told them then, one day you're going to figure out that it's not just about you. It's about all the isms. And here we sit today with an ism of racism that is separating us and is hurting us and is making us separate ourselves in a way where even those people who loved you once are having a hard time finding you to love. Good morning, my brother Jerry. It's good to see you. I want to let you all know in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be working with my brother Jerry Hership and other people, like-minded people throughout the community, and we're going to put together a virtual conversation around the isms that are separating us. And we're going to do this together, white and black together, because that's what we have to do to change the world. So be mindful of your privilege. Be mindful of where you stand in the current day dilemma, and keep your mask on and use your hand sanitizer and be peaceful. Let's get to the topic and get to my guest. I'm so excited. So Skyler, when I got his bio, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know these things about him. So I'm going to read a little bit of it for you. Skyler Rhodes is the superintendent of the Los Rios District of the California-Nevada Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. He received his Master's of Divinity with honors from Drew University in Madison, New Jersey, and has done graduate studies in literature and criticism at State University of New York in Albany. He's also written and published articles, books, including Journey Through the Psalms, Words of Hope and Clarity, Words for a Birthing Church, Pentecost Fire, Preaching Hopes in Times of Change, and Words in Silence, a book of uncommon prayer. I've read that book, and then I've also read Shouting Joy to the Storm, which was his 8th book. Let's bring Skyler Rhodes to the mic here, all this virtual stuff is just like making me crazy. It's a good thing I have a 21-year-old that's living with me during the pandemic. So welcome to the mic, Brother Skyler.
Oh, hello. Thank you for having me here.
It's really good to have you here. Move a little closer to your phone. Kiss it if you have to, so that everybody can hear you as we begin this conversation. So I asked you to be a part of this conversation today because one, you and I have an incredible relationship. We spend many hours in our commute time talking to each other over the phone. You drive me into my garage many, many days. And we've been talking a lot about COVID-19. We've been talking a lot about, the pandemic and how it's affecting those of us who practice a faith. It may not be, the religion, the denominational religion of Methodism, which you and I practice, but faith in general, how the role of faith is manifesting itself throughout our communities during COVID-19. So will you share with our audience this morning on your thoughts around COVID-19 and faith? And thank you again.
Well,
Sure, thank you. I think that faith and hope are things that, when the times are good, they're pretty easy to claim, But we have faith for such a moment as this. And faith, I just want to say, isn't really about what you believe. The actual word really has to do more with what and who you trust. And if we trust in the power of love, if we trust in the power of God, then when the struggles come, when the hard times, we are empowered to do things that will help with the healing instead of cause more damage. We're empowered to be a witness to what it means to be community in a nation that is so extremely individualistic.
And when we talk about faith, you and I live in California, and one of the things, we're both transplants. The other thing that we have in common, we're both transplants from the East Coast. But living here sometimes, and maybe it's because I have grown in my faith and I live my faith. It's in my DNA. It's on my skin. It manifests itself in every decision that I make. But I find sometimes people get all weirded out when I talk about my faith, and they don't understand that faith is the foundation to everything that I am. And if I didn't have it, I've told you this before, I wouldn't be here, because I dealt with depression in my 20s to the point that I wanted to die. And if it had not been for my faith and growing in my faith, meeting people like you that took my hand, I wouldn't even be here right now to be having this conversation with you. So why does the word faith create so much fear?
Well, I think it creates some fear because, in truth, we people of faith have not always behaved well. So sometimes our witness has not been helpful to our reputation, if you will. I mean, so I think that's part of it. But I think too that I referred just a minute ago to extreme individualism, which I think is kind of at its apex here on the West Coast in the United States, anyway. Because faith is essentially communal. Faith is about us being together and having each other's back. Faith is practiced as we look out for one another. Your friend who said, I'm coming by, you give me the list and I'll pick up whatever you need. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about people looking out for each other and not counting the cost in that. And if you're an extreme individualist, that can be a little threatening, I think.
And when we speak of faith in this context right now where we're living, so much has happened since we chose the title of this podcast. But when we're living in this time of COVID-19, where we're physically isolating ourselves from each other, because I don't like the terminology social distancing, because you can't be social and distance. The two words don't go together. So I've been calling it physical distancing, because that's what it is. So, but in this time, where is faith? Skyler, where do you see faith right now? Right this second.
Right this second, I see faith in the many, many communities that I have the privilege to work with as they rise up to figure out how to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. I see people giving out food. I see people, meeting with elderly and making sure their neighbors are okay. I see people coming together to worship God, even if they have to do it on Zoom or in conference call. They will not be stopped practicing their faith because of a virus. And to me, that is really powerful. I see in our one of the areas in our district, they've raised thousands and thousands of dollars to support undocumented folk who may have lost their job but don't have access to unemployment or other benefits. People are rising up to support one another and to be agents of healing. And I see faith everywhere, everywhere.
And, you know, just the other day, a couple that I'm very close to, they had a baby. Even in all of this anger and pandemic, life is still being created. Life is still happening. And this beautiful baby was born. And when they sent me the picture moments after, like after he was cleaned up, and I saw faith in him. I saw hope in him. I saw love in him. And so even through all of this, there's still good things happening in our world. And when we talk about faith from the perspective of the good and the fellowship that happens when we practice our faith, what does that when you bring all these people together with faith, what happens with that? Because you've been in this, you know, you've been a DS, you've been a pastor. When you've brought groups of people together through their faith to make a change in an area and community, what happens, Skyler? What happens to what's the metaphysical stuff that happens during that time?
I think spiritual and actual transformation take place when people come together. You know, at the core of our faith, you know, is the notion that when you give yourself for others, things change. People change. You change. And so when you come together to really sacrificially give yourself for other people rather than to be, as Scripture, Holy Scripture says, being tyrannized by what you want, most of the time in our culture, folks are ruled by their desires, by what they want. But if we give up what we want, and we come together in community to serve one another selflessly, even sacrificially, things change. People change. Mm-hmm. And there's transformation in our hearts and in our world.
Well, when you wrote your book, Shouting Joy to the Storm, it resonated with me that this conversation that we're having today is really about, and I'm sure when you wrote it, you couldn't imagine this day, right? None of us could have imagined this day, but the title speaks volumes. What are we trying to shout? Shouting joy into the storm, to the storm. Explain that. Explain that.
Well, for me, and I hope for others, participating in the life of faith results in an absurd level of optimism. My family, my kids would roll their eyes and say, "Dad's a professional optimist." You know, but I believe that faith leads us to an optimism for which there may be no visible reason to display. But we believe and we know what the future holds because of our faith. And it is that kind of optimism, that kind of joy that we shout into the storm that can, in fact, dispel the storm.
Yeah. And when you... go ahead, please, because that's profound. Say.
But I'm reminded of the picture of that young man standing down the tank in Tiananmen Square. That's optimism, you know? And we have an optimism that isn't founded in you know, how many folks have passed away from COVID-19. We have an optimism because we know that healing is coming, and healing is even happening now.
Yes. Yes. And even in this time of such angst and drama and there's so much going on. I've decided this weekend I'm going to take a little hiatus from the news because I need to cleanse my soul a little bit, and I will be fasting. And so those of you that have the physical ability to fast, I know not everybody does, but if you do, join me on Sunday and let's fast. Let's fast a little bit before we get into our worship, if we are folks that worship, and invite someone else to worship with you. Let's start doing some of the things that we know work in building fellowship and building partnership. Oh my goodness, we have, it looks like somebody joined us this morning. I'm going to see if they're willing to talk to us, Skyler. Maybe they have something they want to say to you. Let's see.
That would be wonderful.
I know. Good morning. I've made your caller, I've made your mic live. Is there something you want to add to the conversation or ask Skyler?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yes, I am asking you. Is there something you want to add to the conversation that we're having? Good morning.
I'm just trying to listen in.
Okay, so you can listen in from where you are. Thank you for joining us, though.
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay. All right. So, Skyler, when you and I are in the world, in the community, we can see so much pain. We see it all the time. And for those of us that, and I'm not going to segregate us from people who we think don't have faith, because that may not be true, right? Just because we go to church and we practice religion, that doesn't make us any more faithful actually than anybody else. But I know a lot of faithful people out there that are doing some great works and so forth. And so how do we, maybe during this pandemic or after the pandemic, come together and not let denominational faith be the barrier, or denominational practices become the barrier to faith?
Well, I think if we are authentically practicing our faith, for we who claim the name of Jesus, if we really follow this faith, the dividing walls that separate us come down. And the labels that the secular world would like to put on us, the walls that they would like to build around us so that we can be controlled by them, fall down. Because there's nothing more dangerous than a people who are united in love. We can change the world. And I think that scares people.
Okay, so take that thought. You're saying that because of the how we're led, we can really change the world. But does that scare us as well as scare the world? Is it a duality of fear?
I think you say a wise truth. Nelson Mandela said, it's not that we're afraid that we have no power. We're afraid that we have more power than we can handle. Yeah. But now we have to be, as one of our listeners just wrote, we have to be courageous soldiers. And when I use these war terms, I'm always worried that people think that I'm saying go burn the house down, go hurt somebody. But I'm talking about the steadfastness of a soldier. I'm talking about the courage to take love into the world, the courage to speak up when something is going on that is contrary to the values of our humanity. Where do the human values, where do they marry faith? Well, I think the listener who talked about being courageous soldiers knows, as many or most of us do, that we're in a struggle. And being a person of faith doesn't mean that you sit back and smile. You engage. You take those human values of justice, compassion, equity, fairness, and you live them to such a level that others get to experience them too. And you build communities, whether or not they're denominational or doctrinal, but you build communities where everyone gets to be safe.
Yeah. And wasn't it, I grew up in the 60s and I remember people were talking about communes and community and sharing life and all of that. And you know, I know people made fun of those folks and everything, but the one thing about that model or that mode of thinking that I loved was yes, Betty, engagement. And that people were going to do things together and garden together and eat together. And again, you know, it got a bad rap for all, you know, the reasons that we know. But are we really talking about changing the world to a place where neighbor helps neighbor, people love each other, and that we're not being so judgmental? I mean, can we even get there? Do we have the capacity?
We absolutely have the capacity, and I can tell you that we're actually there now. We just have to keep moving. In my own little neighborhood where I live, you know, all of a sudden people are checking on each other. You know, I had a neighbor stick a note on my door going, "Haven't seen you in a day or two. You okay?"
Yeah.
You know, people are buying groceries and leaving them on each other's steps, giving people rides to the doctors, helping each other, and doing, you know, even... you know, I agree with you about the term socially distancing, but people are sitting on their yards and bringing each other food and playing music. It's happening now.
Yeah.
And I think that there are powers in the world that would have us think that there is no hope, but hope is alive. Hope is present, powerful, and that's why we shout joy to the storm, because we know it's true. The storm doesn't run us. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know? I mean, I'm living in this story from Scripture where Jesus is on the boat and there's a storm raging and he's taking a nap. And his followers are freaking out. "We're going to die." And he gets up and he goes, "What's wrong with you?" You know? And but because he knows the storm doesn't rule us, right?
Yeah.
The storm doesn't run us. And, you know, so I think that we are defeated when we give in to the lie that the world is a horrible, terrible place and people are bad. It's not true, actually.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember, because believe it or not, Skyler, we're almost done. But I remember as a little girl, and I'm so thankful for the upbringing and training that I had as a young child, where my mother would say things to me and again would say things like, if you have, it's your obligation to give. If you have the ability to have a whole lot, then you have to give some of that away. And I know in raising my children, I did the same thing. Every year before Christmas, they had to give away some things that they had that they didn't touch all year long, before they could get again. And I know there were people out there who said to me, "That's rough," but you know, they're still givers now that they're adults because they learned that. And also, I want to thank my good friend Debbie Donnelly, who was the Girl Scout leader for my daughter, and the values that she and I both shared, she passed on through her leading her troop. And so all these things build faith. And in our last minute, Skyler, just give the audience your last word of wisdom, and then we'll say goodbye until next week.
I don't know how much wisdom I actually have, but I would offer that we can never go wrong if we cut each other some slack, if we give each other the benefit of the doubt, and if we go the extra mile to give ourselves, whether it's material things or our love, to give for others who are in need. And that's the core value of who we are, whether there's COVID or not. It's just now, it's really testing our mettle.
So you heard from my friend, my brother, somebody that I share the humanity with, somebody who I love, Skyler Rhodes. Skyler doesn't look like me. Skyler and I don't share the same gender, but we share the same heart. And because we share the same heart, we are able to walk this world hand in hand to make a difference. And so, Skyler Rhodes, you have a blessed, wonderful day. Thank you so much for the leadership that you bring to the California-Nevada Conference. Thank you for your friendship, and thank you for your love. Everybody be well out there in Facebook land. Have a wonderful day. And yes, Betty, keep singing that song. Wake up, everybody. God bless you all. Have a fabulous day.